Well, hi guys. Today I have a guest, and this is Dr. Douglas Lee Gilbertson. And he is a doctor, a PhD doctor. Do you have your what do you have your PhD, and why do people call you a doctor, and what do you do for a living? As if I don't know.
My PhD is in sociology. My specialization is street gangs and forensic victimology. I teach those classes as well as research methods, ethics, senior thesis, and standard other courses like that in a criminal justice department at a state university.
Okay. And it's my understanding you've done episodes on Oxygen Channel. Can you tell us about that, the name of it, and what it's about, please?
The series was produced by 44 Blue and Blumhouse for Oxygen Network, Oxygen Channel. We had one season. There were 6 episodes, and three of those episodes were cases that had not been covered before by us in any press conference or anything like that. And the other 3 episodes are from the book that Kevin and I wrote, Case Studies in Drowning Forensics. And that is through CRC Press. It's available online at various websites and various prices. I think the highest is 150. You can get it in hard copy or in ebook.
Where can they get it? Like at Amazon online?
I believe it's at Amazon, yes.
Okay. And who is that mostly marketed to? Like law enforcement, like homicide detectives or
When
something?
we wrote it, the audience was intended to be broad. I used it as a classroom textbook, but that was not the intent. The intent was to cover many of the cases that we have discussed in previous uh, news conferences and press releases and so forth, and other media that we've been on, like Larry King, Good Morning America, and so forth. And the intent was to present the evidence for the public so they could look at these cases and see that our assertion is forensically based, that these were, in most cases, homicides on land and then the bodies were dumped in water, or the young man was drugged, abducted, drugged, and then thrown into the water, whereon they drowned. The one section of the book I actually cover 5 cases in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and then the final chapter, because there is so much of it, oh, there's no patterns. Well, I show you the patterns in just La Crosse, so you can use that. The textbook also. I put together Appendix D, which is a chart on postmortem artifacts that can be used to assess the recovered body at the recovery site and during autopsy. And then once you have these 2 points in time, you can work backwards. And we used that same science in the Rodney Reed case down in Texas to help get him a stay of execution on death row.
You mean Kim Kardashian isn't the one who did that?
That same case, she came along after
The hard work you guys did for years?
him the first stay of execution. The state of Texas put him back on.
Wait, isn't Rodney Reed still facing a death sentence?
He's still sitting there, yeah.
So you guys worked on that prior to Kim Kardashian arriving?
The first time we looked at it was 2015, and then he was put back on the list. I believe it was 2018 or 2019.
Really?
When we got involved again.
Oh, so how did you guys hear about that? Is that through Kevin? And who's Kevin?
Yes, actually it was the final episode that Kevin was doing.
Who's Kevin?
TV show. Kevin Gannon, the co-author, a retired New York detective sergeant.
Is he homicide detective?
Homicide, one of the most decorated detective sergeants in NYPD. He has 2 medals of valor. That's where he risked his life, for another human being.
And he's a part of the Smiley Face Killers also, right? The episodes?
He's the lead investigator on our team, and he's in the episodes as well with Anthony Duarte and Mike Donovan, two of his partners.
Oh, they were New York detectives
Yeah,
too?
all three of them.
Oh,
I'm the
okay.
only non-cop in the show.
But you make cops, don't you? As a
Yeah,
university
that's
professor?
why I teach police officers, probation officers, correctional officers, victimologists.
Okay, you help them get the degree so that they can get their bachelor's or their master's and stuff like that to be
Correct.
a cop, or people who are police officers now who want to further their education, correct?
Mm-hmm. Undergrad and master's.
And possibly, I have a lot of police officer friends. I'm a blue supporter. And they're cadaver dogs and horses I support. Dry humor. So if, let's say, one of my friends who's a police officer now wants to further their education, are they able to have you as their professor and to do it online completely from, let's say they're from California or from some other state and they're not in Minnesota. Are they able to take your class at your university?
In fact, when I'm teaching one of those courses, they can sign up for it. But
So you have a course coming up online?
I have several every semester.
Online purely, 100%?
100% online or hybrid.
Oh, so people can do that.
If
Okay.
it's hybrid or high flex, they don't have to come to the classroom. They can log into D2L and watch the recorded lecture.
They can watch live or on demand later when it's
either
convenient for them.
Log into the Zoom and watch live, or they can watch the MP4 at their own time, synchronous or asynchronous, completely online.
Okay.
And once you come in with your associates, our entire undergrad bachelor's as well as our master's of science.
Okay, so if anybody who's watching this,
online.
who's a police officer or not, wants to be in criminal justice, email me and I'll hook you up.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so
important to note is starting fall semester, our program, we're switching over from thesis or portfolio to a starred paper type setups. That we're gearing it more towards the professional who's already engaged in the career field, so that they can come in and expedite getting their master's.
Okay, so now on the Smiley Face Killers, The Hunt for Justice, that they can watch on Prime Video,
Mm-hmm.
You're known as Doc, correct?
Right.
Okay. Because you've lost some weight. Maybe people who watch this interview then go watch the videos on the episodes may not recognize you, that you've lost weight. So congratulations to that.
Lost some weight, shaved my face.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is on your forensics book here. Can you show us again your book that they can order on Amazon or on other means? Okay, so why, it's my understanding you guys wrote that book because of the investigations that you've done on these Smiley cases, right?
Yeah.
That the homicide, people, the police officers, law enforcement is not treating it as a homicide first. Teach me what this is. I recall you guys saying you wrote it because, right? Because the law enforcement they're not treating cases as a homicide first, investigate to clear it and check it off the list prior to then rolling into the accident, but rather they do it opposite. Am I remembering correctly?
That's correct. Of course, there's 5 manners of death. And drowning is often listed in some autopsies as a manner of death and as a cause of death. Well, it can't be a cause of death. That has to be medical. Drowning is a scenario, and it is not one of the 5 standard manners of death, which are natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined, NASHU. When we look at most of these cases, they are either closed as accidental drownings or undetermined. And in some cases, we even had one individual who told us that he was standing on the bridge with detectives, and they didn't even have their boats in the water yet to start dragging, and the detective lieutenant told him, pointing down at the boats, he's like, "Now you got to remember, this is an accidental drowning." And he's like, "Wait a minute, accidental drowning? You haven't even found my brother in the water yet. What are you talking about?" And that's the presumption going into the case. If you find the body in the water and nobody saw it go in, then it must be an accidental drowning. And if
No.
the kid was out drinking, then it's a drunk kid who fell in the water.
Now, everyone knows I'm in judicial law.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a trial specialist at the top law firms of the country, the
Yeah.
top attorneys. If people don't know my experience, I'm not bragging, I'm just sharing details. Ken Starr, who'd handled the Monica Lewinsky case, I even studied in his office. When he wasn't there, I'd shut the door and go in there and study to be a USA Women's Gymnastics judge. Robert Shapiro, O.J. Simpson case, blah, blah, blah. A lot of known decorated attorneys at law firms, top ones. So I'm going to ask you, if devil's advocate here, you're not an MD, how would you know these things? I know within your the Smiley Face Killers episodes, you had the world's most known expert medical doctor, the pathologist, correct? What was his name?
Well, for many years now.
Now, I want to know what is his name?
Dr. Cyril Wecht.
Now, did he also agree with your guys' analysis that people should not rule out something as a homicide? I mean, rule it as an accident prior to ruling out homicide first. He agrees as to this cause of death is not drowning, but rather suffocation, etc., right?
Yeah, manual strangulation, ligature strangulation.
So you guys wrote this book to possibly help the future cops?
Well, yes, and years before we published the book, we touched base with not only Cyril Wecht, but Dr. Michael Bodden.
And now what is he related to? Which case?
Michael Bodden was the chief medical examiner for New York City for several years, and he's very famous. He's been on like CNN and Fox and stuff like that.
Don't you also know the medical doctor who did the autopsy on George Floyd?
Yes, I do know him. We worked with him in the Rodney Reed case down in Texas with the Innocence Project, the Innocence Network, and Bryce Benjet, the Innocence Project attorney on that case. Dr. Wecht he wrote the comment on the back of our book. And
yes, I see that.
And very early on, he told us that we were on track.
You're right. Okay, I'm just checking because I'm a trial specialist here.
And that he would never.
So you had experts. It's not just.
He would never challenge us on our investigative skill.
That's what he told you?
Yeah. And for folks who don't know Dr. Wecht and Dr. Omalu are the ones who took on the NFL regarding concussions.
Oh, the movie that was made out here, The Concussion? What was the name? It's something like that.
Dr. Wecht and Dr. Omalu. Malo from Los Angeles. Those two. And Wecht is the one here. And when he saw the Appendix D that I put together, the chart that's very useful in assessing post-mortem artifacts to determine an estimated time of death, he loved it.
What is he known for, Wecht?
Wecht has worked with the JFK case.
He did the autopsy on JFK?
He was a participant in that. And he's written a book on it.
Did he do Marilyn Monroe?
I do not recall. He's done several famous cases.
Okay. People can Google it and learn. Okay, and they can see Dr. Wecht in the Smiley Face Killers, The Hunt for Justice.
Three of the episodes with us.
Yeah. Okay, so another question I have, and then we're going to go, is I'm going to be playing devil's advocate here with you, Dr. G. It is known that the FBI does not support your guys' analysis as to these cases because they say you guys say this is a group it's a serial killer group. Mm-hmm. The FBI says no, there is no such thing. Serial killers are either a single person or maybe possibly in twos together. But there's no known serial killer groups. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think other than the fact that if you look at the last chapter in the book, where I lay out that there are in fact patterns in this town, and not just La Crosse, but in other towns. If you look at the cases and you look at our assertion, we do not assert that these are serial killers, because all of these former FBI profilers that have come forward and said that we're wrong, it doesn't fit the profile for a serial killer, and all I have to say is you're correct, but you're applying, as a forensic victimologist, you're applying the wrong profile to this set of circumstances and data. If you look at it, there are cells that repeat. And as we go through time, people are going to age in and age out of participation in these cells. So over time, if there's more than one, and in many cases, like Milwaukee's 4 cases, La Crosse is 12, Eau Claire is up to 6. That's just Wisconsin. Manhattan, New York proper has a bunch more. Chicago has about 8. I mean, so in that time frame, you might have an individual who only participated in 1. You may have another individual who participated in 2, and so forth. And you may have some that are fresh or were in at a time. And they always say, well, nobody has ever, talked about it. Well, actually, we've had 5 people come forward who were former members, and that's one of the reasons we know about the group. We've been to their website that had a camera and a password protected entry point for it, so we know how they communicate. In fact, we came across that very, very early on, several years ago, like shortly after we got started together, working on this in 2007 is when we discovered that. But they say there's no precedence, no historical precedence for groups of serial killers. And all I say is you need to go back to college or go back to high school and get your history textbook, because there is a historical precedence for this type of killing. The very first one
like what? Go ahead, name one.
Would be the Spanish Inquisition. You had groups of inquisitors who went around to different countries searching out heresy and killing. They all wore the same uniform, they had the same belief, they used the same method for extinguishing people.
Okay.
That's groups of serial killers, because they would kill in this town, then move to the next town and kill, and move to the next town and kill, then they might
Okay, that's a good enough example, just one.
That's one.
Now I want to ask you another question.
KKK is another. The Einsatztruppen, when they first started the extinguishing in the Holocaust before they set up the camps.
So are these hate crimes? Are these hate murders?
Going around wearing the same uniforms at these different camps.
So right? are these hate? Because that's all hate crimes, right? So a particular group, there's a target.
Yeah, I suppose you call it religious hate crime with the Inquisition.
Okay, what about Smiley Face Killers? Then it's a match. It's a hate crime, right? It's targeting a certain look or group.
Well, we have talked about that, and we try not to get too specific with the symbols or the exact.
The symbol meaning the smiley.
Well, that's just one of. There's 12 others that we look for.
People need to watch the episodes to understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, if you see a smiley and there's a body in the water, it may or may not be one of ours. But if I walk up to it and I see some of the other symbols, and then I look at the victimology, the profile of the victim, I can pretty much tell you whether or not that's one of ours.
I remember researching and finding that the FBI dismissed the smileys because of the fact that they're a common symbol. Now, but we use some common logic. Are you telling me there's a smiley face at every body that was found? It's a commonality? I mean, it's just a coincidence? No. Yeah, right? That strikes the idea of that it's just ordinary and common.
And there are smileys in some locations, because I'm a gang specialist. Before any of this started, I used to travel the country and say, there's a bridge, like in Toronto or something. And I would stop and, examine it and take pictures and look around. I did this in Italy. I've done this in Croatia, Germany, Poland. I look around for graffiti. And you will find smileys, but they're not ubiquitous. They're not everywhere. And the key is, when you get to these cases, if you think it's one of these, then some of these other symbols should be present as well. And if they're not, if all you see is a smiley, then you have to really wonder, is this a copycat, or is the smiley here before? Is the smiley faded?
Yeah.
Well, then it's not associated with this death.
So I have another question, and really, truly, this will be your last question. Sorry. Okay. So I did some research, and I saw that you recently did a podcast interview, and I watched it, and they kind of slammed you. Because of the fact that he said that you were only doing it for just upsetting the families. You were running off their sadness and their deaths and kind of just used their storyline just for a TV show, and that you were unconcerned and never had an intent to solve these crimes. Now I ask you, those were his allegations and never give you a chance to rebuttal.
No, I didn't use any of the interview from me.
Right, so I want to know the answer to those questions. Is that true? Did you guys just use these family members to spin a TV show and get the attention and never have an intention to solve these crimes?
No. In fact, right from the get-go, Kevin and I both felt the same way. And as a victimologist, I'm very sensitive to the act and potential of re-victimizing the parents. We never intended to do that. In fact, my data set has over 300 cases in it. We have probably only been in contact with about 80 of those parents and have various pieces of information from them. The rest is all from the media. And the reason being, we do not contact the parents. There's only been maybe one or two cases where, just oddly as it would seem, more local cases, where one of my students is a friend of or knows the family of the victim and so forth. In one particular case, they were actually uncles. And so I said, well, if they want my help, they help. But in, I would say, 99.9% of these cases, we went out there in 2008 and did a press conference. We put the word out there, and people have contacted us. Families have contacted us. Some have called us immediately when their son went missing. Some it's years later, but we don't reach out to them. We have no.
Did you ever intend to solve these crimes?
Originally, it was just to help the families understand them and get answers, because we have no arrest power. We have no.
None of you are active cops.
No search warrant authority or anything like that.
But you did meet with law enforcement to try to flip cases to be investigated further.
I've written letters.
You've met with FBI, have you not, over these cases?
We have briefed the FBI in their offices.
With secret information,
Twice.
Which will keep confidential, of the identities of people involved in this, correct?
We have given them names of suspects as well as the graffiti that we know is present, so they have all that.
Right, so you informed the law enforcement and federal agents so that further investigation could be done, right?
Yeah, I would have to say...
and so it's in their hands, not yours. You did the maximum you can possibly do, correct?
I sent certified letters.
So that podcaster was wrong.
128 politicians. Kevin and I personally went down to Washington, D.C. and met with 2 congressmen in their offices.
To try to solve this.
And laid it all out, to include all of the graffiti, the names of suspects in 5 cases. And we've met with a Department of Justice representative. And
so you've done it all. You've just senators to FBI agents to
state,
and these are all meetings.
State police, district attorneys, attorney generals, county law enforcement.
So it seems as though the podcaster was wrong.
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
And we've done all of this using our own money.
Never paid a dime.
We've never allowed family to pay for our gas, our plane tickets, or our hotels.
Right. Kevin is known to have, it was online, I read somewhere, that he got some kind of pulled money out of his home, mortgaged his home, second
mortgaged his home.
To help people. And I can't believe you guys are being accused of using these people.
All of the
parents, the families, just to be on TV.
All of the toxicology tests in Gerald Smith's case that's in the book, except for the first ones done by the medical examiner, I personally paid for all of those tests.
For the what?
All of the toxicology tests for the contaminant.
What were you guys looking for?
GHB.
Oh, the rape drugs?
The alcohol in the blood 3 times each to prove that it wasn't changing.
Didn't you also pay for DNA, like for on the clothing?
In another case, that case, fortunately, we actually got the producers to pay for that.
Oh.
With the back.
Right.
Wet back thing, yep. M-back.
Yes.
Very useful.
Well, do you have anything else to say before we go?
That was Holman's case.
And they can find that in the episodes, right?
And I think the fact that we did that and that I paid for that demonstrates that that podcaster was wrong. We have always felt that the family should not pay us or reimburse us because they, quite frankly, have already paid way too high of a price by losing a son. And we don't want them to be re-victimized by having to see the photographs. We always tell them, do not look at the photographs. But some mothers and some fathers insist, and I strongly discourage that, but we certainly don't want them paying for tests. And we'll share the results with them. We'll help them understand the autopsy because the language can be a little tricky. I'm not intimidated by it, not at all. Medical examiners will use some big words, but it's actually, once you get the language down.
Well, do you have anything else before I'm gonna go? Do you have anything else that you want to say?
I'm not actively investigating any of the cases. Kevin,
except for you're involved with me on my cases, and people can watch it. It's a pinned Facebook series, a true crime that you guys can watch. There's some 10 success cases pinned. It's true crime, missing person, some homicide cases, and Douglas here has helped me, and he's the one who does the interviews.
Yeah.
In the interview videos, pinned to the top of my Facebook, found as Kimmy, KYMMI, Bloomberg.
Yeah, and sadly, we're both working with missing persons cases. I'm not involved.
And I don't get paid either. I've never been paid.
But they continue. The Smiley Face cases are continuing. Cases you're handling are continuing. And it is just a stunning, absolutely mind-numbing statistic, the number of people who go missing every year. And I'm not even talking the silver alerts. I'm talking just people snatched off the street, children snatched off the street.
Yeah, it's terrible. We need to stay in prayer as a country and be praying daily.
Yep.
And personally, I support, like I said, I'm a Blues supporter. And they are the nicest people. There are rotten people in every area, medical doctors to teachers to whatever. We shouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. And I have worked with very honorable men and ladies who are active police officers, mostly in homicide, and they're amazing people. And I applaud them and I support them. And I just want to encourage people to not throw the baby out with the bathwater on concerning law enforcement. But we should definitely, get rid of the bad ones for sure. Okay, well, thank you so much for being a guest on my channel.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.